Hello and welcome to Low Carb Conversations. I'm your host, Leah Williamson. Just me today. Holly wasn't able to make this record because I'm talking to a fellow Australian and it's in our time zone. Holly wasn't able to make it, but I'm sure she'll be back on next week. She's really looking forward to bringing more interviews to you guys. But our guest today is Vanessa Kelly from Vanessa Kelly Yoga. Welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to talk to you. I've got a little bit of a bio I'll read to you, and then I'll get you to tell our listeners a little bit more about you. But before I get into that, our connection was, I think, did we find each other on Instagram or Facebook or something like that?
Yeah. And I remember seeing you speak at some low carb conferences that I've been to when I was living in Melbourne. So, we'd always been part of that community as well.
Yeah. So, and I was like, I really like Vanessa, even though we've never met in person. I don't think I was like, I'm like, I feel like we know each other. So yeah. Kindred spirits. Yeah. So Vanessa is a yoga instructor with an advanced diploma of yoga teaching and many postgraduate qualifications, including kids yoga and prenatal. And Vanessa teaches yoga for people who want to build a healthier body and mind. So thank you, Vanessa, for being on. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your journey, how you came to being a yoga teacher and, why it's so important to you, and then your health journey that you had inside of that as well?
Yeah, so I became a yoga teacher after the birth of my first daughter. So before that, I'd always worked in sales jobs, more in the kind of interior design architecture field. And that's always kind of a great passion and love that I have in my life. But after the birth of my first daughter, I realized that it wasn't a life that I wanted to go back to. And that's probably mostly to do with the stress that it was causing me. And it's one thing when you're in that stress and just you're in it, but to bring a little person into that, it just felt to me like it wasn't the path I wanted to continue on. So, my second great passion in life was always yoga, because of how it had transformed my life, probably also to do with the, very stressful kind of sales jobs that I'd always had and the pressure I put on myself. Yoga was always like a breath of fresh air for me from that life. And so I thought, well, I'll follow that passion. And I did my teacher training, which in and of itself was like a life-changing experience, the way that it helped me look at the world and view the world. And because I'd been on quite a long health journey before becoming a yoga teacher, I've always experienced problems with sleep and with my gut and those kinds of things. And I went paleo with my diet back in 2010, which really, really helped me. I was suffering from thyroid problems and really bad anxiety. So yoga and food have always been kind of those two things that have healed me and helped me along and always been there supporting me along my health journey. And after I finished my teacher training, we were told by our lecturer to just kind of take whatever opportunities came to us. If that was teaching at a park with some family, if it was teaching at a community centre. And for me, the first opportunity that arose to me was teaching little kids in the community house where my daughter was going to daycare. So I jumped at that opportunity and that just really started to snowball. I got another job working in a kindergarten in St Kilda, where I worked for 5 years teaching different groups of kindergartners. And I love kids yoga and the journey that I've had with my children and learning all about how the benefits of yoga and mindfulness can help them. And I think what it is that I look back at little Vanessa and I see how yoga and mindfulness and meditation would have helped her, because I know how much it helps big Vanessa. So I wish it had been available to me. So I think by sharing it with children, I'm sort of offering something that I wish that I had when I was a little person. And so that's kind of what keeps me going and keeps me inspired through my practice and sharing the gift of yoga, because it really is such a healing practice and can really be such a beautiful kind of add-on to all of the other things that we do for our health, like the food and even just movement. Like it's so much more than that. So yeah, that's kind of how I became a yoga teacher. And now it's what I do and it's what I love to do. I'm so lucky that I get to teach and share yoga with people.
And you have a wonderful Instagram page that I love to follow, and you're sharing lots of different things on there, little tidbits and stuff about your children's yoga, about your life, things like that. And one of the things that you've been kind of bringing out lately is your cup filling cards. Do you want to talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, so I created some kids' affirmation cards primarily for myself because I wanted to use them in my kids' classes. And I was a little bit unsatisfied with what I could see looking on Pinterest and Etsy and the kind of downloadable printable versions in what they were saying in some of the affirmations. And so I started making my own just on a Word document, printing them out in black and white because I've only got a black and white printer at home. And I just wanted to take that further. I felt really inspired to keep going with that. And so I created this beautiful set of, I call them cup filling cards. And it's all about, first of all, it sort of teaches us, our children, this idea that we have this cup that needs to be filled, that we need to, and that can be filled by other people giving us love and kindness and respect, but also it's about filling our own cup. And that there's ways that we can do that. And the thing that I love about the cards is that they are an opportunity to kind of have these conversations with our kids that we might not normally have. I talk with my children a lot about, that kind of social and emotional learning, which I think in schools can be a little bit lacking. Perhaps, in schools, it is a part of the curriculum, social and emotional learning, but it's more to do with children becoming able to sit in a class and learn and work together. It's not so much about making them into whole, well-rounded humans that can cope with the demands and stresses of our busy modern lives. It's not so much about that. That's unfortunately still our job as parents to give them all of those tools so that they can go out in the world and cope, because they can have the best education in the world. They can have, an amazing degree, but if they're not able to kind of deal with the daily stress of their lives and have that belief in themselves to move themselves forward, then it can become a little bit redundant. So it's a way to facilitate those conversations that I naturally have with my children about, being brave, about having I can give it a go attitude, about failing and learning from your failures, those sort of fundamental things that we need to learn about, and all of those life lessons that we have as adults that we think back, oh God, I wish someone had told me about that when I was a littler person. It's a chance for parents to have those conversations with their children over, the pick of a card, and really, build that social and emotional literacy and development that children need to learn. It's not something they're born with. It is something that we learn and something that we need to learn.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that, learnt behavior, and it's such a great conversation starter as well, because I feel like these days we, like I'd say probably in most households, children aren't really regulating their emotions very well. They come home from school and they might have had a bad day, and maybe you get a small snippet of something in the car ride home, but then they're straight onto a device to do homework, or even onto a device to watch whatever they want to watch, depending on the household. It's a very common scenario. And then they don't have that time to actually process what's happened. They're just straight onto a screen or a device. And then it's hard to kind of draw that conversation back out with the child afterwards, because they've kind of, I guess, like suppressed that emotion or haven't had time to process that emotion before moving on to something that's distracting them or is full of noise. So it's great to have these cards. Even you don't need to be a yoga teacher at all. This is something that you can use at home, where you can have this conversation with the child. Maybe they need to pick one up, and then it's just a way of starting to open up and start to talk, because that's part of health as well. That's part of the whole well-being, which is why we're talking about this today. It's not just about the food that we're feeding our children, it's also about their emotional health and well-being as well. So have you found your cards helpful to kind of bring up those conversations.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you talk about regulation, and I think that's a huge thing that I've learned being a mum and being a kids yoga teacher is about this ability to regulate. And with my kids, I talk about it as being in balance. And I talk about that in my yoga classes as well. We physically talk about it with balancing and tree pose and things, but it's about coming back to balance. And as adults, we know that, that time when you're feeling like grounded within yourself, you sort of got that centered, uplifted energy. You're like, yeah, I'm kind of here and I feel really good. But then those times where you might be affected by something that happened earlier in the morning, and then, you're driving along, someone cuts you off, and you kind of get further and further out of balance. It's these little things that stack. And then it might be that top thing where your husband doesn't take the bin out and
he's the one that cops it at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's the same thing with our kids. They have these things that happen all day, and it can be all day at school where things stack. Things that happen with their teachers, things that happen with other kids at school, and they stack. And they can come home in this dysregulated state, this state where they're out of balance. And so I talk to my children about their way back to balance, because it's that imbalanced state where we have, our thinking mind working, our prefrontal lobe, where we're not in our sort of lizard brain. We're in that thinking mind, and our body is in that rest and digest mode. We need that state for us to digest our food properly, to process information, and just be able to be. And when our children are in that state, when your children are in that state, because they're like, I'll help you unpack the dishwasher, mummy.
My children must never be in that state.
That's how I know it is with my children. They're willing to help. They're willing to cooperate. And when they're not like that, when they're out of balance, you see those behaviors, and that's when we can see them kind of acting in those ways. And the cards are kind of a way to facilitate those conversations about being in balance, about feeling good in your body, about those kinds of nervous system states. It's a way to have those beautiful conversations with our kids, because quite often it's just the time of sitting with us and sharing, talking, what it's like when you sit with a friend and you share something that's going on for you. They don't have to solve that problem. We don't have to solve all the problems for our children. We just need to be there to listen, and they might need a few tools to help them deal with those things. So the cards, and I used the cards on the weekend at a family yoga event that I ran. And we did a circle of the cards at the end, and I asked the kids to come in and pick up a card, take it back to their mat, and their parents could share a story about them that related to the cards. So I think, I can't remember what my daughter's was, but I shared a story about her, and all of the parents were whispering this little story to their child, and seeing the children's faces, because they love that beautiful story about themselves at a time where they were brave, or about a time where something really bad happened, but this beautiful lesson that they learned from it. Children love stories. We all love, stories. It's a beautiful way to learn, but children love stories about themselves. And it's a beautiful way to bring them back into that sense of balance and harmony with themselves. And it was really cute, because at this event, the littlest girl that was there, Marley, she stood up and said, can we pick another card and tell our parents a story about them on that relates to that card? I was like, absolutely, you can, yes.
That's so good. It's like, it's also, that's what I was thinking the whole time you were speaking. It's like, it's great for the children, but it's also great for the adults as well. It's like,
absolutely.
Definitely learning from that. Well, they're called cup filling cards, and I'll put a link into the show notes for everybody so they can find where to pick up some if they're interested.
Love that. Thank you. Yeah.
And I've got a set. They're beautiful. I'm always using them with my little yogis as well. And and that's a great way to start the conversation. I like that one. I haven't tried that one with them. I might do that. Tell me a story.
Yeah.
I get all kinds of stories.
Don't they? Love stories. It's all about the stories.
That's right. So we are talking a little bit about the world, the kind of like the world that we're living in at the moment. It's it's a strange place to navigate for children and adults. And children can show, many different signs of stress. It's not always the way that we think that they do. Sometimes children can be very stressed or worried about the world, and they might act out and be angry, which you might not associate with. And I have an article here, and they're saying, maybe the child has frequent stomach aches or pain or headaches. They don't want to go to school. That's probably one that is obvious. Crying, withdrawing, all of those type of things. And then in older kids, they're saying, there may be lying, bullying, nightmares, all these kind of different things, how stress manifests. And the article is kind of talking about how the health benefits of yoga and meditation can be brought in to help with what's happening there. And I like this one too. It said some of the physical benefits are yoga improves balance, like you were just saying, strength, endurance. And it also can help reduce the risk of diabetes, which I found was quite interesting.
Yeah.
And then also it can help if kids have abdominal pain from stress. Yoga can help ease these. And then mentally, there's quite a few too, like can help improve focus, memory, attention span, self-esteem, classroom behavior. So do you want to talk a little bit about stress in children that you've seen, and how yoga and meditation or mindfulness, positive affirmations, those kind of things can be helpful for children?
Okay, so I think with children, we see stress manifesting in different ways, and we have to always think about what is this behavior, what is behind the behavior, what's really going on. And I think those tummy aches is a big one that relates to anxiety. And I because I have my youngest daughter is a bit like me, and she suffers a bit with anxiety, and it will manifest as that tummy ache. So I think sometimes acknowledging for them that it's a feeling, and that it's not necessarily that sort of body-mind connection, that because you can have a stomach ache because you've eaten, and I talk to my girls about this, the way that the food that we eat makes our body feel different ways and, perform in different ways, but also the way that our mind can affect our body. So, tummy aches caused by a nervous mind and being worried, I think that's a worry in your tummy. You might be worried about going to school, and acknowledging those things, because I think there can be a tendency to dismiss. No, don't just, you'll be fine. There's nothing wrong with you. Sometimes, we need for them to acknowledge it. And for kids, the most powerful tool that we can teach our children is breathing exercises. And for really little kids, that can be just that they are breathing, that we breathe naturally all the time. But then that breath is something that we can control. And really simple breathing exercises like slow breathing. I call it breathing ball breath. I have one of those Hoberman spheres. You might have one as well, where we make it really big and we make it really small. And they can do that with their hands. As we, breathe in, we get our lovely big belly breath. And then as we breathe out, the belly retracts. And that's the movement of their diaphragms. And the more that happens, that sends signal all the way through your body that the outside world is safe, that you're okay, and that the body can start to relax. And that cascade of things that are happening in the body of the stress response start to calm down. And then their gut is more able to digest food. They're not going to get those tummy aches. I know that's something that I definitely have experienced in my life, having gut issues for a really long time, and diet helped to a certain extent. But beyond that, it's been my ability to regulate my nervous system and get out of this fight or flight state that we can be in more than we know. It can be just a chronic pattern that we hold and that our children hold as well. And being in that state, you're not digesting your food. You're not absorbing all of those wonderful things that you're putting into your body. It's like if you had, a plate full of food and you're just swiping half of it into the bin, basically, if you're not in that lovely rest and digest state when you're eating, or enough of the time during the day. So it's about, like as I said, bringing our children back to balance, and breathing is a really powerful way of doing that. Movement is hugely powerful for the body, to help with stress, because when we have a feeling, it can kind of flood our body, and feelings are like a wave. I talk to my kids about that. We ride the wave of our feeling, whether it's worry or it's anger. It has an arc where we feel it, we get to the top of that, and then it can kind of recede. So it's about flowing over that wave. But also, once we're kind of past that wave, we can have that residue of the feeling in our body. When something happens, you get cut off in traffic, or a ball comes out on the road and you brake, and you get that surge of adrenaline that can kind of sit in the body. So moving our bodies, children to move their bodies, can help kind of process the feelings of the day and the stress of the day, and help that move out through their body. So it's really important that our children move.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I always get my little ones, as soon as they finish school, we just put Shake It Off, Taylor Swift on, and just bounce and just shake it all off, just move the body, just get it moving. And, you can just see from, coming in tired, or, just all kind of hyped up from the day, it just calms them all right down, even though they're running around shaking it out.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it? And it's funny, I talk about that. I teach a yoga class to toddlers and their mums at a shopping centre every week. And that's one of the things we do, is we shake, we shake our hands, and we shake our whole bodies, and then we pause in a mountain pose still, and we shake. And as we're shaking, I always say to the mums, if you've had a bit of a morning, if it's been one of those mornings, just to get out the door, bit of shaking, because it's just that idea of shaking it all off is really, and they all laugh, and we all feel better. Everybody feels better. And I think it can also, one of the things that I wasn't aware of until I became a parent, and did some more research around this, was the idea of co-regulation, and how important it is for us as parents to be regulated, for our children to regulate. So we can't expect a little person to calm down, find their center, and regulate from something big that they're feeling if we are not centered ourselves. And I think we can naturally do this. I had a beautiful yoga teacher friend that I know was telling me a story. He's a new dad. He's got a little toddler. And he was telling me a story of how his son was just having this raging tantrum, just stomping his feet and punching his little arms. And he's this, he's quite a big guy. And he said he just sat on the floor, and he said, "Buddy, come here." And he grabbed him and he curled him into his big, strong arms. And he said, I pulled him into my lap, and I breathed, and I just went down into my belly, and I breathed deeply. And he said, and my little boy calmed down. And even telling that story, I get chills, because, he knows you don't need to know about co-regulation and mirror neurons to understand that a grounded and centered parent is what helps a child find grounding and centering. And in a world where everything is so changeable and different for children, 1 week they can go to school, the next week they can't go to school, 1 week there's masks, the next week there's not. There's so much going on. Being that grounded and centered home base for your child is very important. And we also need to mirror, to demonstrate to our children this idea of being unregulated and being regulated. So showing them that way of back to balance for ourselves, so that they can learn how to do that themselves. I'm not saying that every parent needs to be a perfect, calm parent all of the time. I too scream at my children. But it's about finding your way back to balance, showing that to them, and being that rock in those times where they're unable to ground themselves, is you doing that first for them.
Yeah. So true. And I had the biggest lesson once. I remember, I think I was rushing home, and we had maybe from work, and I had a few minutes to get the kids ready for school, and they just had sat around and hadn't gotten ready. And I was just like that. And which made my daughter worse, because I was like that. She all of a sudden was like, I can't find my shoe. I don't know where this is. I was like, oh my gosh, you sound like me. Let's just all stop for a moment. It doesn't matter if we're going to be a little bit late. I think this is more important, to just stop for a moment and just like calm down a little bit, rather than, you know, feeding off each other. So it's so true to be able to find that. Yeah. And I was thinking too, when you was talking about, I love that story about just stopping and hugging. Like, that's an amazing one to do. And quite often, if the children are upset, I'll do something similar to that. But I remember when they were littler, I used to, and they might have been this in that, you know, that constant kind of tantrum loop where you just can't break them out of it. And, you know, this is a whole debate on its own, but many parents probably feel like they just want to give them a smack to smack them out of it. And we all know that's not the right thing to do. And that's probably what we would have happened to us when we were children. But we used, instead, to help me, I would just sit there and and that would make them stop, because they're like, oh, mummy's making like a really weird sound out of her mouth. But it would calm me down as well, and it would calm them down. And then they would just stop and be like, that's some strange noise you're doing. Okay, I'm going to sit there and try that too. You can be louder.
I love that. I mean, it's a real pattern interrupt, isn't it? Because we work in these patterns, and we go off on trains, and it's hard to then get off. And quite often you need that pattern interrupt. So something like that. Or I even find going outside, if you're inside and that's happening, sometimes I just say, and Maggie Dent is a big one for that. She will say, all right, that's it. Everybody goes outside.
Yeah.
We're all outside. Take your shoes off, get on the grass, have a run around, swing on the monkey bars. It can be that real change of state, can be what you need to just kind of, flip it on its head. And because in those times of heightened emotions, they're not the times to talk to our kids and reason with them and, all right, just take some calm belly breaths when they're screaming. We need to teach them those things when they're calm, when they're regulated, when they're receptive, and have them practice and learn those tools then, so that when they're in those heightened states, that they can bring those tools in. And even, you know, there's a friend of mine who brings calm kits into classrooms. She's a teacher, and she has sensory kits that children can use in classrooms to help them calm down. She has a little infographic, and it's like an arc. So as children are escalating through this state of stress or tantrum or big feelings, there's a point where you can employ those tools, breathing, movement. But as you get to the top of that,
not listening. If the worst thing my husband can say to me even is just calm down. And it's like, that's going to irritate me even further.
You have to wait till we're back into that receptive point. And I often say that to kids in my classes. I'm like, has anyone ever said to you when you're really, really angry that you need to calm down? They're like, yeah. I'm like, do you like, this is how you do that? They're like, oh, okay.
That's what they mean.
Breathing, sitting on the ground, hands on the belly, or breathing ball exercise, and all those kinds of things. And I'm like, this is what this is what parents want you to do when they're saying, just calm down.
I love that. That's something that, that sounds so obvious, right? And we probably just, as a parent, you're just like, just calm down. Oh, actually, my child, I don't know. The child's like, I don't know how to.
I don't even know how to do that half the time.
I definitely don't know.
It's the thing, we need to, regulation is a learnt thing, and we do that with babies. We physically do that for them when they're little babies. We rock them and we soothe them. And as they get older, they start to regulate themselves, but they still need us, even up to teenagers. They need us to help them regulate, because, the brain isn't, I think it's 24 before your brain is fully formed. So got a lot of regulating for our children to do.
That's right. Yeah, definitely. Well, you've given us a few tools here, a few ideas. So I'll just switch back over to one of the articles. I think they were kind of talking about, some extra tools here if you're wanting to give your children some ideas of maybe wanting to do yoga or mindfulness. So one of the suggestions is explain it to them in an age-appropriate language. That alignment doesn't have to be perfect. I think you don't even need to know yoga to incorporate yoga. No. That's one thing that people always say all the time is, I can't do yoga because I don't know how to do it. That's, you're doing it to learn it. If you've got a
Yeah.
genuine interest, anyone can do it. It's available for everybody.
And I mean, with your kids, I mean, talking about alignment doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to be poses. It might be getting down on the floor and saying, let's think of as many animals as we can think of and make those poses, like make, the shape of the animal with our bodies. And I mean, if you walked into an adults yoga class and asked them to do that, that would send everybody off the Richter scale. Everybody would be like, oh my God, get me out of here. But children are wired for that kind of creativity and play, and it's how they learn and process. So doing those kind of things. And I think one of the things that I didn't see in this article that she didn't talk about was co-creation with our children, which I think is one of the most important things about doing yoga with children, because our children spend all day being told what to do. We like, get your shoes on, brush your teeth, get ready for school, eat your breakfast, get your bag, get out the door. And then at school, all right, sitting here doing that, Let yoga be a time where they can have some of that control back and, let them lead. Maybe you get a yoga book together and you flip through and they try some of the poses that they think. Really let them take the guide and, lead and co-create that experience together, rather than being it's something that you're pushing down their throat or forcing onto them. Yeah,
I love that. And I love doing that with my little yogis. It's kind of like, all right, we're going on a jungle expedition today. What do we need? And then they just take off and take all of the things. I don't want to be a person. I want to be a bird, or I want to be a tiger. And it's like, yes, excellent. You can be whatever you want to be.
They're so much more imaginative than we are. I'm like, I could never have taken it in that direction, but let's go.
Yeah, that's right. And I thought this game was only going to last 2 minutes, and like 10 minutes later, we're in deep depths of the jungle and crawling through mud and climbing trees, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that creative play. And then we mentioned some of the other ones. Take it outside. They talked about do different poses at different times of the day. You don't think you need to even get into that too technical with that. I think just moving the body.
So as well. And I even kind of flip that on its head, because I think quite often we think, oh, you need to calm down, so we need to do really calming poses. But I found, and especially with a lot of boys, they need movement before they can relax.
Yes.
So you need to get lots of movement, lots of that energy out, process all of that stuff for the day, and then they will be able to lie on the floor and rest and be in that still state where they're receptive to putting on an audio meditation or doing a body scan with them, expecting them to do that just before bed because it's bedtime and that's what the clock says.
Yeah. I always remember the most funniest thing with my daughter when she was little, and we decided to do an audio meditation, and the lady was asking questions. It's like, are you in a nice, comfortable place? I just hear this little voice. Yes. And are you lying very still? I am. It was just so cute. But definitely and you've got to really, it's like even introducing new foods. You're introducing new concepts. You're not going to just throw the food at them and expect they're going to enjoy it. So same with these practices. Like maybe you want to implement a little bit of something into each day, see what works, and maybe try a few different things. And when you find something that works, then maybe stick with that and go a little bit deeper into it. So especially with the meditation, I would never put a 10-minute meditation on for any child straight up first time. I don't think any child would want to sit there and listen to it, but just a little snippet, or even just start with some breathing. And I think that can just get them interested in it.
And I definitely think before bed, she's got here about preparing for bedtime. I think before bed is a perfect time to introduce audio meditations. That's how I've introduced my children to it. They love listening to meditations. They love it when I do meditations for them. I've got some on my website, a little package of 3 that I use in my kids' classes, because I like to play one and they can listen to it, and I can go around and give them a little forehead massage with some lavender oil, which they love. So putting something on like that, giving your child a nice little massage at their temples, a little rub of their feet, making it this beautiful experience. If you've ever been in a yoga class and you've had that and the lovely meditation music playing and the teacher is talking you through it, and they might give you that little neck massage, you're just like, oh yeah, I'd love to do this again, you know,
Yeah.
make it something that they enjoy. And before bed, it's a really beautiful opportunity for them to kind of be introduced to meditation. Then you can bring it out to maybe some rest time in the afternoon. Sometimes we lie on the bed together and listen to an audio meditation rather than, you know, sitting with your legs crossed, having their hands on their knees, really still.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be really hard to get a kid to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love there's even books that like children's books with children's stories that are meditations for the children as well. I really like those. So if you don't want to put the, you know, audio on, then you can always just read a story meditation to your children as well. And there's lots of those books around. But I love your idea of, just get some off your website as well. There you go. Yeah. There's already some done.
I know that they work. My children love them. My yoga kids love them. So yeah, I have them there. It's just because I find it can be hard to find really good ones online, and especially that have, you know, my children like to listen to either English accents or Australian accents. For them, they find that a bit more relaxing. Yeah, so it's just a bit of a different point than some of the stuff out there because it can be tricky to find. The other one that I really love is the Light Weavers meditation, which is by Tara Aldridge. That's something that is available to purchase. Yes, you have to spend a little bit of money, but quite often you're getting something that's like a really high quality and that you can really trust.
Yeah, I like that as well. I like also if you're looking for songs and kind of little meditations and stuff, I like Kira Wiley. She has those nice little songs and things like that. So the kids little yogis and I always do the Namaste song at the end all the time. So they're laying there and they can listen to it, and that's their little quiet time, and it's just long enough that they're not going to get up and run away while it's on. And one of the other ones I liked the sound of here was maybe like creating your own little mindfulness corner as well.
Yeah,
so
I love that.
Yeah, and just making a nice little space like during, you know, when we had the lockdowns and things like that. I had to create a little yoga space here in my office, and I had never done that before because I'd always gone into the studio. I had like my mat down, but it wasn't a space, you know, and that's something that I really enjoyed, was making this corner of my office into like a beautiful little area with some candles around it and some plants and things like that, and just making it like that's my yoga space. And so the kids often want to come down and sit in that space too. So that's you know, something very simple that I didn't even realize was needed in the house, you know.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. I think that's wonderful. Yeah. And I feel lucky because I have my yoga stuff around the house, and I have my yoga cards with the poses that my girls will often get them out and do some yoga together. But I think it's important to have, a space in your home that is for coming back, and, you know, they can come back to balance. They might even have their list there of the things that they love to do to bring them back to balance. They might have a couple of fidget toys, or my little one has this it's like a little square of really soft fabric that she just loves to run her hand across, and that makes her feel really calm. So, you know, we have that there. So just those little things that can help them, a space that they can go to, and to find calm. I think that's a beautiful idea.
Yeah. And then one last one we might talk about too is cultivating gratitude and setting positive affirmations. So we hear this all the time, and, you know, like people always talk about drawing in their own gratitude journals and stuff like that. Do you want to talk us through how we might kind of do this for children, or like or with children?
So my favorite way to practice gratitude with children, like I do, there's a lot of different ways we've had a gratitude jar at home where at the end of the day we write it on a little slip of paper and put it in, and then sometimes we'll sit there and get all of the pieces of paper out and read them. Last term with my yoga kids, I did a gratitude paper chain. So every time they started the lesson, they had a little strip of paper and they wrote a gratitude on it. They could decorate the back. And at the end of the term, we linked them all together into a beautiful little paper chain, which was really lovely. And I think to see all of the length of that and wanting to add to that was really inspiring for them. But my favorite thing, and I do this with my kids at the end of the day, is a happy, hard, and a helpful. So we talk about something happy. I'm going to say, tell me something happy that happened today, which is quite often really easy. I got a lollipop because it was someone's birthday, or we did this, or we went on an incursion. Tell me something hard that happened from today, which sometimes quite often very easy. Tell me how you were helpful today, which can take a little bit of, it takes a while. But when they come up with something and they think of that, the self-confidence and self-esteem that you can see that gives them, quite often their little heart lifts and their shoulders open up, because they feel quite proud of themselves that, oh yeah, I was helpful. I did help that person. And then we go back to their hard and we say, well, what did you learn from your hard? What's something that you can take away from that hard? And then from having that little conversation, that's when you can perhaps move to an affirmation. You might have a deck of cards where you just do a random pull, or maybe you have your cards up on the wall. I made this little string with cute little wooden pegs to hang all of my affirmation cards so the kids can choose one. And they could use that affirmation, see how it applies maybe to their heart, or maybe you could come up with an affirmation together. If it was my maths test was really hard and I think I did a really bad job, your affirmation could be, I always do my best, I try my best, and that's going to be, and that's good enough, those kinds of things. So coming up with a meaningful affirmation to do with something that happened in their day. So it's that sort of little bit of self-inquiry that we do, and then we come up with the affirmation that we need out of that.
I love that. Such a great idea. And and doesn't have to be complicated. It's just a conversation starter again. I love that.
It's a little framework for a conversation. Yeah.
My daughter makes these things, she calls them twisties, and it's like a little affirmation on a piece of paper and then a colored piece of paper, and she glues them together and she twists them up, and then she leaves them in little places as little presents for people.
Wow.
Yeah. And I have a friend in the US, and she put a whole pack of them together and posted them to her, and she didn't realize they were coming, and she opened the bag and she was like, oh, how did you know? That's exactly what I needed, So it's such a cute little thing to do.
So beautiful.
Yeah. They're always listening, children. They're always seeing what you're doing. Yeah.
Oh, yes. They're always listening and they're always watching. And quite often, and I think this is the thing, that it's less about what we say and more about how we behave that our children are learning from. So they watch you, they watch the way that you come back from being really angry. They watch the way that if something happens, how you repair with somebody else, because we're all human. We all have this full range of human emotions. We all live in a very stressful world, and some of us cope better than others. And it's about learning those tools that we have, being able to help our children build their own set of tools to be able to cope with that, because we all have ways of coping. Like I said, some of us cope better at different times than others, and that's about setting up a really good foundation of health with, yes, food, yes, watching what you put in your body, especially with children, to do with additives and colors and those kinds of things. But a big add-on of that is that the environment that they're in, the regulation that they're able to achieve in their little bodies, and that's setting our children up to have great experiences at school, be able to cope with this big, scary, changeable world that we live in.
Oh, that is so amazing. I could keep talking to you forever, but I think that's a really awesome place to end. Very, very well ending there. And if people want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to find you?
So probably on Instagram or Facebook. I love to post, as you said, things about yoga, but also about parenting, things with children's yoga, all this sort of stuff about regulation. And whenever I have a story from my children that relates to that, I always kind of post about that. So definitely find me on Instagram or Facebook. And if you're interested in any of my products, just check out my website, vanessakellyyoga.com. And I'd love to connect with you. If you listen, feel free to send me a little message on Instagram or something and say hello. I'd love to hear from your listeners.
Oh, brilliant. Excellent. Thank you. And I'll link those into the show notes as well, so if anyone's looking where to find them. So thank you, Vanessa Kelly from Vanessa Kelly Yoga. So great to chat to you. That's the end of today's episode. Our theme music is created by Andrew Bowden, and production services are by Kevin Kennedy Spain of Disc of Light Media. Have a great week, everyone.